Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Waiting for everybody to come out of the waiting room. I just want to make sure that everybody gets in. Nope, nobody left behind in the waiting room. I hope everybody's having a great Tuesday. It is Tuesday, right? Yes. Hope everybody's having a great Tuesday. Randolph was making fun of us. We're all kind of quiet on this side today. Julie and I we're just kind of we're here. And I joked I should have worn my t-shirt that said I woke up like this, because I did. Ha! So good morning. We are going to give Randolph a part two to his yesterday, what he started yesterday with This Changes Everything. And so we're going to give him the opportunity to share with us part two, to finish that up. So if you're joining us on YouTube, you can chat your questions or comments in. If you're joining us here, same, chat your comments in. You can also use the auxiliary.uga.edu auxiliary connections tab, and then go to survey and feedback and leave us comments and questions there as well. So in the interest of time, I will turn it over to Randolph. Take it away, Randolph.
Good morning, auxiliary family. It's good to be back here with you all. It's another beautiful day, so hopefully you all get some time to spend some time outside. It's Bad Head Day number 5,000, and the saga continues. And I really appreciate a second opportunity to go through the chain cycle model and finish up with you all. And you know, just to get Catherine's morning started, I have to bring Tortilla Man. And he's got
in my defense, those eye holes are not quite as big, so it's not quite as creepy to me, but you know, we'll go with it. Have fun.
Listen, he has a smile this morning. He's mellow with a little smirk, so he's feeling the Tuesday. All right, so I'm going to share my screen with you all real quickly, and then we will start just to make sure that we capture our entire time. All right, I just need to double check and make sure my sound is good. So let's do a quick recap. I'm jumping straight in. If for some reason you're watching this video later and you mistakenly click on this one, this is part two of the series. And just in the interest of time, I'm starting kind of where we left off. So I may go back a little bit and split the cycle into 3 and 3. So I'm starting at the end of that third cycle, and then we'll move into the fourth stage in the cycle, but we're in the yellow zone at this point. So go back to the videos page, and you'll be able to pick part 1, which walks us through the reds, and for the most part, the first stage, which is stage 3, in the yellow. Just a quick reminder about what the cycles are about. Again, we've added some stuff to the resource page. We've added a PDF that really explains all of the cycles in the chain cycle process. You can have several chain cycles going on depending on the event in your life. For all of us right now, universally, we're all going through COVID-19 as a big chain cycle. But again, your chain cycles could be professional or personal or corporate, like we all are doing. Another quick thing, it's that when you're confronted with change, there is no skipping of any of the stages. So you will hear, and I've gotten a lot of questions when I do this model about people talking about, well, you know what? Once somebody says something's gonna change, I'm at stage 6. Yeah, you may have advanced through the other stages pretty fast and faster than most of us typically would, but you didn't just skip to stage 6. So there is a process that happens, and depending on each individual, that time frame varies in terms of how intense our experience is in each of the stages and how long we sit at a stage. There's no good or bad stage. It's just a set of predictable behaviors that as human beings, we can look at and say, once changes are introduced, this is what folks go through. Most of us think that we ought to like a change in order for us to go through. Whether or not you like the change is not of consequence, it does not matter in terms of the change cycle. If you like the change, you may be able to progress through some of these stages a little faster than you typically would. But if you don't like the change, sometimes you get stuck in the first 3 or 4 stages, and it's a little harder to move you to stages 5 and 6. What's key to note, though, it's that we want you to build some skill sets in order to get through these stages. I'm going to propose to the directors of our units that we spend some time once we are back on campus to do some intact teams. So work with your small teams on understanding these. So I know you have a bunch of questions about these and what they mean. And once we get back to campus, we'll be able to dissect each of these more in depth. All right, I have a hand by Joseph. Could we take that question real quickly? And then I'll go through the other 3 stages as fast as I can, and then I'll open it up for even more questions. Joseph? Catherine, did we see that hand?
Joseph, you're unmuted now.
Eddie.
Okay, let's move on. If we can get him back, that's fine. I'll just look out for his hand again.
Sorry, Eddie.
All right, I'm going to move on. So again, in the 6 stages in the change cycle, red stages are really your stages of loss and doubt. And I mentioned earlier, in every change, whenever a change is introduced, so you see at the top of the circle, the change is wedging itself into the circle. Whenever a change is introduced, there is something that we lost, and that typically comes from our human instinct of fear of flight. And so we're not as safe, we're not as comfortable as we were anymore. And our initial reactions are reactions of fear. Our big questions are, what does this mean for me? And can I live with this? Our behavior becomes paralyzed. It's almost the equivalent of the deer in the headlight. We move to stage 2, where and stage 2 is actually one of the most dangerous stages. This is where emotions really get high. People's anger and resentment are there. Their behavior becomes very resistant. Their thoughts are skeptical. Now, the doubt that people are feeling in stage 2 is not abnormal. This is a normal reaction, the brain's reaction to slowing your responses down a little bit so that it gets a sense of what's going on. Understanding, though, that resentment and resistance, either in your personal life or in the workplace, can have some severe consequences for the relationships that you have either with your organization, individuals within your organization, or with individuals in your family. I'm going as fast as we can because I definitely want not to spend too much time on these stages that we've already done. The 3rd stage is that stage of discomfort. What's key in this stage that I have to bring out there is every single one of us, even the ones that consider ourselves highly productive individuals, highly stable, highly flexible individuals, we arrive at this stage, and some of us spend a lot longer time here. Actually, people who consider themselves highly productive really spend more time here than any of the stages. And the reason for that is it's really simple, because we're in a place where there is an anxiety. It could be a performance anxiety. What does this mean for my area of expertise? What does this mean for the relationships that I built, that I created? What does this mean for the foundation that I've built over time? And how am I going to be viewed? How am I going to be evaluated and all of that? So we're trying to figure things out. We're in an area of discomfort, and our mind gets fogged with solutions to an issue. And sometimes it's almost like the autoimmune type response, where our body and our mind overwork itself to correct a problem, and even the overcorrection of that problem creates additional problems. So Again, phase 3, you're more of a place of discomfort. You're not fearful anymore. You're not as resentful as you were in phase 2, but now you have that anxiety of the unknown. If that isn't taken care of properly, if phase 3 isn't taken care of, stage 3 isn't taken care of properly, we run the risk of falling back into the danger zone and start being fearful again and paralyzed and start working our way back through the cycle. Sometimes folks just sit in stage 3, but sometimes they revert to stage 1, particularly if there are other attributes of the change that they really haven't been able to reconcile in the first 2 stages. So that's where we were. That's where we ended yesterday. The next stage is that discovery stage. I started to talk about it a little bit in advance to that. I started to talk about that discovery phase a little bit. And this is where in the first 2 phases, the goal there is really to create that sense of stability. It's to first acknowledge and do an inventory of the change. What's changed here? How does that change affect me? How can I keep myself safe? How can I take care of myself? How can I take care of my family? How can I take care of the values that I have held on to for a long time? I know we talked about in yesterday, we talked about us looking at 2 different changes. So the big universal change that we're all going through in COVID-19. But then I also asked you to stop and identify a change either personally or professionally that you were going through. It could be the loss of a family member, the loss of a spouse, the loss of a divorce situation, a new job, a new boss, any of those things. I was thinking about this morning, and if you were born before, if you were born or if you were alive around September 11, 2001, you would really get a sense of what we're talking about. So, and I'll go back one step, and that's on that stage 3 where we're talking about discomfort. One of the key things to do there is to begin to ask yourself, have I dealt with this before, right? And if you ask yourself, have I dealt with it before? How did I deal with it, and how did I overcome it? I was thinking about the example of September 11, 9/11, because prior to 9/11, if you traveling was so different. I wouldn't say it was easier, it was harder. I would just say it was very different. If you think about it, if you had a family member traveling and you wanted to say goodbye to them, you could actually go all the way to the gate and kiss them goodbye and hug them goodbye and watch them go through the tunnel of the plane. Today, because of September 11, that has changed drastically. What I will tell you is a lot of the actions that we're having right now, so the protests and all those things happened as well in September 11, because Americans wanted, to make sure that as a country, our rights were respected. And there was a lot of that angst about, is this going to be the new normal? This is not the kind of country we have. And eventually we started moving from this place of loss. I can't hug my family members anymore. I'm really mad both at the situation, but at the government's response to the situation. I don't know if this is what we're going to do. How am I going to travel now? If I'm traveling with a lot of people or a lot of kids, all the new document requirements that exist, how am I going to figure this out? To the point where, okay, I've tried this once. Traveling isn't as bad as it is. So today, when you think about it, when you're traveling, particularly if you're traveling, and we're talking air travel here, you really don't think about what was before. You know that when you go in or get on a plane, you have to go through security. You know that your bags are going to be scanned. For some of us, I don't know, for me, I always get the little TSA in my check bags. I don't know what it is about my bags that they always have to open, but they always open my bags, and I always get those little check things. At first, I was like, why did they open my bag? Now I expect it because it's become the new normal. That's where the change cycle is going. That was an example for those of us who were around September 11 and did some traveling around prior to that time and are doing some traveling now. That's a great example of seeing how those transitions happen and how as a corporate body in the United States of America, we moved through the stages of the cycle to where now that kind of travel and those things that have been pulling our way in terms of air travel have become a part. It's been integrated into our society and the new normal. All right, so in the discovery phase, there is this movement from finding safety and security to finding solutions. And so on this other side of the cycle, it's how do I find solutions for this change? How do I incorporate this change into either the skill sets that I have, the knowledge that I have, the resources of the people around me, and how do I make this work? Now, you can't jump to how do you make this work until you've done a really good inventory of what was, what is, and what's to come. It's just, most people try to run and make, how do I make this work without acknowledging the laws, without acknowledging the current resources and the current environment. And I will tell you, you can jump there, but there will be one little attribute of the change that takes you all the way back to stage one if this piece isn't done properly. So in terms of a profile of this stage, the major focus here is how do I find solutions? And most of us, if we just take a step back and unclutter the fog in our mind, we're able to find solutions, or at least look at a series of options that we can analyze and pick one. So the PDF that we put on the resource thing talks about the third stage being like driving through a fog, whereas the fourth stage is you're out of the fog, but now you see there's all these moving pieces and making sure that you say, okay, I can use that, I can use that. I have an experience with this, I have an experience with that, and we can make that happen. If you think about it, when we closed, when the university decided to go remote with all of their instruction, and we decided that folks needed to be off campus, that was a change that wedged itself in a way that we had never experienced. Was there loss? Yes. Was there a lot of doubt in terms of what the next steps would be? I know there was a period where we were answering a million questions a day about whether or not people had their jobs, whether or not they would be paid, and all of that. And then I remember a Friday evening, it was about 7 o'clock, a Friday evening call where Robert and a couple of the other directors asked, okay, so what's our next step? And we moved to that discovery phase, right? We started thinking, okay, what can we do here? What are the opportunities that exist with this new change that has been put in place? This is a good time to either build and strengthen your decision-making skills in terms of analyzing and creating options. But if you tell yourself, I'm not always good at decision-making, this is a time to really start getting a new skill set. There are people on your team who are great at problem solving, who are great at decision making, who are great, if nothing else, at putting all of the options on the table and saying, these are the options. Now, given the options that you have, what can we do? So I would encourage you, either in your family or in your work situation, those people who are good at processing and figuring things out. If you're not strong at decision-making strategy, this is an opportunity once you get to this phase to build some more strength in that area. Again, the dominant emotion here is hope. And I will tell you, when I think about our universal change that we're going through, I may be tired, but I am extremely hopeful and excited about what we can do as an auxiliaries team moving forward. It's almost like we've kind of opened up so many new avenues that are exciting. I was on a call with the directors today, and I was listening to Don Walter talk about the electric buses. And I mentioned yesterday, and Don mentioned on the call that there was an article in the UGA News about the electric buses. There was also an article about the College of Engineering. A lot of you have heard on the fireside chats where Robert talked about some of those partnerships that we have with students. One of the things that Don said on the call that caught my attention in terms of this particular presentation was the fact that our engineers, our transport engineers, who have been working with Protea have actually influenced that organization schematics to where we helping them right now redesign their electric buses. I want you to take a step back and understand that. Imagine you being that organization, Protea, where you sold this university, and we're not their first customer. So you sold this university your buses, and this university comes back and say, listen, we have people who have experienced driving buses. We have people who have experienced maintaining these buses. And here's the deal. Based on our experience, based on some of the models that we've tested, these are the recommendations that you've made. Protea could have said, no, you can either take our buses or go find another set of electric buses. This is how we do things. This is who we are. This is our identity. You don't come here and tell us what to do because you're not the first customer. But businesses don't do that. Businesses don't hold on to the past. Businesses sit down and they take a step back and they discover. They spend a lot of time in discovery. So did Protea go through the cycle? Yes, they were losing something. They were losing some of their previous schematics. But when they reached this phase in the cycle, they were able to say, wait a second here. These guys and this organization is onto something. So not only did UGA work with Protea to redesign the top of the buses, that work is continuing with other aspects of the electric buses because our engineers were able to say, we've been here before, we have the experience, we've looked at these models, we've put all of this on the table, and we have something to bring. I mean, they're designing everything from helping to redesign everything from the steering wheels to the seats and all of that. Again, that's because an organization like Protea has not only stuck in the first two phases and said, we're not going to change because that's who we are, but they've opened themselves out for discovery. My question to you would be, with this new normal, with this new method of operating as an organization, the question for you would be, what's in your discovery phase? So what ideas do you have that you can contribute to make this new normal something that makes us not just individually better, but as a team better? What good decision-making skills and strategies can you not only employ for yourself, but also ensure that the people around you are making good decisions? What timeframes exist? And what is that one next step that you will take? Remember, in one of the other sessions I did, I talked about the birds talking about going to Florida, and they describe all of the stuff that they were going to do, but none of them ever left the wire pole that they were on in Todd's little neck of the woods in New England. And so they stayed in New England and froze the entire time because they never took action. So for you, the question is, what's that one next step that leads to a series of other steps? So I want to give us an exercise. Catherine, I'm going to play this, and I want to open up the line just real quickly. Actually, let's just open up the text box. And the question is, how many changes will people be able to see? So take a second and watch this video for me, and tell me how many changes you actually are able to see.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
But how did you know?
Madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. Take her away.
That's right, madam.
It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you?
So I'm going to pause the video here. And so put in the chat box how many observations you saw. Now, the dining folks, I've done this video with some of you, so I'm sure you have the correct answer. But if you don't, it's quite okay. So let's see, Catherine. I can't see the chat box right now, but just let me know what folks are saying in terms of the changes that they actually saw before their faith. And if you saw 0 changes, that's quite okay. We'll show you in a little bit.
Some are saying 10, some are saying 8, 0, 2, 18, 3, 1.
Did somebody say 31?
No, 3.
Oh, okay.
1. Somebody said 18.
Uh-huh.
3.
I encourage people to type in some of the changes that they saw real quickly. I'll give you about 30 seconds. Type in some of the changes you saw.
Okay, I can't read and type at the same time, so I'm just going to tell you. Did 2 people disappear?
All right. I'm not going to provide answers. I'll just nod and say, okay.
Okay. Michael Walraven says he's done this before, so he's not going to give anything away. Thank you,
All right.
Michael. Person went missing, paintings, rug, murder victim switched. Each person was holding something different, a rolling pin, the hand and coat, or hat and coat, sorry, the clock. The rolling pin changed to a candlestick. The pan moved that the lady was holding. The suit of armor appeared.
Okay.
Terry could see, so sorry. Then somebody said, don't think the armor was there.
Okay. This is good. This is good. So I'm going to pause you on that for a second.
Okay.
There are some people who were wondering just now if you all were watching the same video that they watched, because they didn't see any of those changes that you were explaining. It's quite okay. I want you to continue watching this.
Can you make it widescreen?
I'm afraid that I may lose.
Okay.
I'm afraid that changing it may change something, but we can try it and just be patient if it changes something in the presentation.
You can blame it on me if something goes awry.
Yeah, it didn't do the widescreen for me. I'm gonna go back a little bit. Did y'all notice how many changes they said? It was 21. 21 changes. All right, here we go.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Well, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
So the idea here is that, and actually this was used as a video, an English video, to warn people about looking out for bike riders. In Athens, there's a bike riding community. So most people in Athens will know what I'm talking about. It's where it at the end of the video, on one of the other videos, it says, you don't see, it's hard to see what you're not looking for. A lot of us, we either ride to work or drive to work, and we know exactly where everything is. But if you're not looking for the changes, you've ever been riding in a car with somebody and they say, oh, look, they just built that stuff. And you're like, no, they built that stuff 1.5 years ago. Why? Because that person did not see what they're looking for. And in this particular phase, in this discovery phase, you actually have to open up your mind to see what you haven't seen before. If you're only looking for the same thing, if you were just watching that video for the sake of watching that video, then you're limiting your perspective and you don't see all of the other changes, 21 different changes that happened as that video was going on. All right. So, Catherine, can we get a hand for folks to see if they can read this? What do you see? Any takers?
I see it, but I don't want to throw it out there, so I'm gonna let somebody else pick it. So,
all right.
First one to say, type it in. Let's see. Daryl Heelan said, I think you missed a letter, Daryl, but opportunity is now her, is what he said.
All right.
Jenny said opportunity is nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Erica says nowhere. Mark Reynolds says now here.
Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. because you can see opportunity is nowhere, and there's nothing wrong with seeing that because you can actually arrive to that based on the words on the screen. Or you can see opportunity is now here. And I want you to think about it in our current situation. We will have people who will say, I don't see how we can come out of this and be the same and things be okay and things go back to normal and all of that. Or there will be people who can say, man, you know what? I had no idea that we could do this, that I could learn this, that I had the ability to do this, or that people on my team had X, Y, Z ability. So, somebody on my team I'm going to call out real quickly. So Julia is in the background, and a lot of you don't see her. But Julia, we call her in to help with some of the behind the scenes YouTube live and Zoom meetings and all of that. And she picked it up. We literally told her one morning, and by the next morning, she was already working with the marketing team to relieve some of the stress on their plate. Now, I had no idea Julia had those skill sets, but just watching her efficiently do these things, it tells me, hey, had we not really been in this situation, I would have missed the opportunity both to learn of her skill sets and to utilize her skill sets. Now, even if she didn't, I wouldn't know. Even if she didn't have those, I wouldn't know because she took the mantle and she ran with it and developed those skill sets. So when we get back to campus, or even in the current state that you're in now, the question for you is, what are the opportunities that exist for you? What are the opportunities that you can bring to the team? I mean, what are the opportunities that exist both individually for you, and what are the opportunities that exist for your unit and your team? That third step will be, what are the opportunities that exist for us as an organization, the greater and larger auxiliaries team. So opportunity isn't nowhere. Opportunity is actually now here. All right. So now we've made the jump and we're into the green. We went from being resourceful, meaning we have this feeling of anticipation. Man, when we get back, like I said yesterday, I'm going to beat Tamala and Brett in one-on-one basketball. We're going to set up some teams. One-on-one basketball, I'm going to lose. I know that. I'm okay with that. I can probably build some skill sets there, but I am depending on others who play basketball good. I'll be on the team of who are the best stars. And I'll be the one catching the ball and quickly passing it off before it gets taken from me. Right? But I'm looking forward to those kinds of opportunities of engagement. I'm looking forward to the dream event where we bring our families together and we have some fun and listen to where auxiliary is going. I'm looking for an opportunity for us to win more awards in terms of customer service excellence from the chancellor and governor. So I am looking forward to this. Robust, not without its challenges, right? We understand that change always has its challenges, but we're not going to sit back and say those challenges stop us. Those challenges allow us to, in Robert's word, to think bigger and to discover more. So now let's go to understanding. So we've kind of migrated and we've reached to a point where, given the opportunities that we can now see with this change, we get confidence. There's feelings of confidence. I feel like things are gonna be good. My thoughts are pragmatic. Well, in as much as I feel like things are gonna be good, we're gonna have a problem here, there, and yonder. But here's what I'm gonna do. If this is the problem, then this is potentially how we can address it. This is potentially how we address this. This is potentially how we address that. My behavior becomes productive. I want to be a part of a moving and growing team. I want to be a part of a robust team. I can tell you, if I were to take the connections as its own chain cycle, we all who were behind the scenes working on this, we went through these, and there was a point where we were moving and we were robust and we were being very productive. And there was a point where we thought, this ain't gonna happen. That's just too much to think about. That's too much to do. We don't really know whether this is gonna be valuable. But as we progressed, we got to a point where our behavior became productive. So the key things here, the dominant emotion is that determination. I would ask every single one of you to make that a dominant emotion after you've gone through the process. Again, we will have some hiccups. We expect that. It's natural and normal reactions. We're human beings. We will expect hiccups. But the more of us that get to this stage of understanding, the more of us that have a dominant emotion of determination, the more of us that are confident in what we can be individually and what we can do as a team, the more of us then need to permeate through our teams and through the people who work beside us or the people who we engage in making sure that we get them to this point of understanding. Now, all of us aren't going to progress along this cycle in the same way and in the same time frame. There will be some of us who get here and will be very comfortable here. And this is the point where we start looking back to bring those who are either still stuck on stage 1 loss or stage 2 down. Here, we acknowledge the assistance that we've received from others, but we also turn and give back. We also turn and support others. We don't get prideful. We don't think that we're the biggest thing since sliced bread, because then we become static in our actions. We think bigger. We think, what else can we do? How much resourceful can we do? Who else can we bring on board? What are the resources that are available for us to continue to use? And how do we grow? A major focus in the stage really is looking at the accomplishments and building on those accomplishments. Again, it's not sitting in where we are, but now that I have an understanding of what this change looks like, now that I've done all of my modeling, now that I've made some really good decisions that's gotten me into the green, what do I do then so that I continue to make this the new normal? The key action points here is to acknowledge the results that you had. Remember, the first step, we were acknowledging what the change had done. What did we lose? What remained? And what could potentially be? We didn't go in depth there because that's not the point in the stage where we do that. But here is where we acknowledge the results. As I mentioned earlier, here is where we work with others to get them as close to understanding. Here's where we give credit to those people who step out of their comfort zones and were able to do a lot. And here is where collectively we celebrate progress. I remember, I think it was 5 years ago when Bolton opened. I didn't work for the union at the time, but I got contacted from I think it was Susan Van Geech, and she said, we want to do something for Bolton. I mean, they had served thousands of meals, hundreds of thousands actually, of meal between their opening day, which, if I'm not mistaken, was August 18. Between August 18 and the week of Thanksgiving, they had served over 600,000 meals. And Susan and I were talking about this, and she was like, so I know that some of my people are really tired. It's really been a lot. It's been very successful, but it's been a lot. And I need to do something that really gets people energized and motivated. But I also want to acknowledge those people who had done a good job. Now, most of those people are still with us. And I tell you, I am still proud of what was done by dining services with the whole Bolton opening. And I know folks still have these T-shirts. I don't have one. Because I just didn't get one, but I really wanted one. So Susan, if you have an old one somewhere, I really want it. It said on it, I survived the Bolton opening. And it was just an acknowledgement that people had worked in ways that they had not worked before. People were brought in from different dining areas to staff the Bolton crew. We had, at the time, one of the largest dining commons in both in the state of Georgia and in higher ed. And it didn't just happen. So there was a good celebration of the people who made those happen. Here, where we're feeling in this green stage, is where now we're beginning to gain back our sense of control. We're appreciating each other. We're opening ourselves, though, to feedback for progression. So it's not just, okay, I think we're doing good and I'm sitting now, but hey, what can we do better? What are we missing? What are we not looking for that we can't see that currently exists around us? And here are the reactions. Productivity increases, competence is displayed, people become appreciative, and people become patient. I take this phase and I go back to the phase of doubt. Stage 2 is when productivity, typically in an organization, particularly when a change has been introduced, phase 2 is when productivity goes down. Phase 3, productivity remains down because people are still trying to figure things out. I can tell you from an auxiliary leadership perspective, that has not escaped our mind. We are thinking about once we get back to campus and we get into that phase 2 and phase 3, what is it that we need to do? And we'll be working directly directly with employees and with management teams all across our units to make sure that people have an understanding of what it is that's going and welling up inside of them during these phases, and how can we move from lower or decreased productivity to increased productivity. Last stage is the stage of integration. This is when it's become the new normal. You know, your feelings have become one of satisfaction, your thoughts have become more focused, and your behavior has become more generous. You're generous to yourself in terms of how much you take care of yourself. You're generous to your colleagues and teammates, the people who work alongside you, beside you, and with you. And you're also generous to the people who we consider our clients or our patrons. So the dominant emotion here is compassion. And you'll wonder, why compassion? Right now, things are going good. Compassion and empathy here in this phase is important, because while this has become the new normal for you, we can't not look back and see who on our teams are still stuck in phase 1. Who on our team is still saying, this is not going to work, I don't want to do this, and why? I mentioned yesterday that the why usually has to do with a loss. And I tell you, some of the people who are most resistant to change and who never really get to the point of integration as fast as they can potentially, are people who feel like they are losing something about themselves. It could be that they're losing an identity, they're losing a skill set, they're losing the ability for the organization to need and want them. And if I tell you, if that is your fear in moving forward or allowing a change that's happening to gradually progress to the integration phase, you're not doing yourself a favor. Because number one, you're standing in the way of progress, you're impeding others, but you're not growing yourself. If you have a skill set that you're good at, you don't lose that skill set when changes happen, right? If a change happened and you're no longer are the go-to person for that particular skill set, I encourage you to use, I call it and you've probably heard me give this example before. Prior to coming to the University of Georgia, I worked in international development. And I worked all over the world around children and youth affected by armed conflict. I'm talking 5, 6, 7-year-old children who did some of the most horrific things all over the world. And these were used as child soldiers, and they killed, they maimed, they burned. And I would always hear people talk about these children in really derogatory terms. Those are really bad kids. Those are kids who, their communities had ostracized them, meaning they've been pushed out of the communities after these wars, such that they had nowhere to go. They had to live on the streets because their little villages that they had come from, which was far from the capital or far from the war, from the hot spots in the war, had pushed them out, and they couldn't come back there. Why? Because some of them did some of the most devastating things in their own communities, not because they wanted to, but because a number of them were under the influence of drugs. If that's an area you're interested in, read about the wars in the 1990s and read about child soldiers, and you will be shocked at the treatment of children. So that was the work that I did all over the world. And so when I heard people speak derogatory about these children, I thought that can't be right. Because if a 7-year-old boy is able to work with 12 other 7-year-old boys, where he's considered their general, he's considered their commander, he is exhibiting leadership skills in a way that if we, and I've written about this, if we take those leadership skills and shifted it 5 degrees to the right, we could use it for positive. Whereas they're shifted about 2 degrees to the left, where they're being used in a really negative connotation and environment, where, hey, he's leading a group of 7-year-old boys to go and burn schools and kill people and maim folks and destroy homes and families and all of that. But when he speaks, they listen. When he directs, they move. When he encourages, they jump. When he chastises, they listen. We can take that and move it 5 degrees to the right and use that for the positive, where if we work with him, he then works with using his leadership skill. He expands the pool of children that either get reintegrated back into the communities or that become really contributing members of their society. Long example, but I want you to think about that right now in terms of integration. And it's funny because the science for doing that and the process for doing that was called reintegration. That's what we call it when we work with child soldiers and children affected by armed conflict. Same concept here. The concept is that we have people on our team who have skill sets that may be shifted one way, right? That may be, they have skill sets that prior to this change, they were the go-to, but now with the change being implemented, they're not that go-to person. But the skill sets that's embedded in them that allow them to be that go-to resource did not leave them. And so the change encourages them. And what we'll do is encourage them to shift those skill sets 5 degrees to the right so that they're the contributing members of our organization, they're good teammates to work alongside, they're influencers who are not influencing in the wrong direction, but are influencing in a positive direction. We're motivated by that recognition, and every human being wants to be recognized for the work that they do. They want to feel accepted by their teams that they're on. The overuse though is when we become arrogant that, you know what, I have arrived at this point of integration and the other folks haven't, and they're just slowing, reaching up. They have to get on board or leave. No, the way you process and the way I process these different stages of change really depends on a whole lot of factors that are sometimes outside of our ability to fully control. The challenge here is that we avoid being complicit, and the opportunity that exists is we make change a skill. And that's something that's very hard to do, making change a skill set, being able to say, okay, a new change has been introduced. Let me go through this same process. The beauty of this model, as I mentioned earlier, is that it's not just about your work. You can take this model and translate it to your personal life and walk through these stages. And once we get back to campus, we will get even more in depth with how, as a unit, as smaller teams and as individuals, we can progress through the stages of the change cycle so that we reach this point of integration. We reach a point of making the new normal, and we reach the point of bringing folks along with us and becoming these high-performing teams that we already are. I'm going to stop here, Catherine, and open up the lines for questions or comments. Folks can chat in their comments, or if they raise their hand, we'll open up their mics. Can we go ahead? Do we still have that poll? Can we go ahead and just put that poll out there just to see where folks are in terms of pick a change that's going on in your life. It can be our big change or some of the smaller personal professional changes, and select what stage you think you're at. And then we'll open up the lines in the chat box to hear comments from you.
Okay, give me a second because the poll was attached to yesterday's. I apologize. I wasn't, my brain didn't go there on that one. Let me, I'll work on that. If you, are you gonna leave
somebody raise their hand, we can open up the line. So if somebody just had a comment, just raise your hand. We'll open up your line for you while Catherine is getting that poll for us. Any comments or thoughts on this model? And I have the model before you. Anyone?
I can't see hands. So Julia, are you, if you could watch for hands.
Debbie has raised her hand. Debbie, I'm going to unmute you in a second. Julia, could you unmute her? I'm having a hard time doing that.
Yeah, Debbie, you're unmuted.
Thank you. One of the things that I was thinking about this last night is I'm going to actually hang this in front of my workstation. And every day I want to make a conscious effort to think about where I am, what changes I have going on, and where I am in each of those changes, and what I might need to do to get to the next one.
Yeah. It's a good idea. It's a good idea. And the little PDF document we included will really help you. And it's just the beginning. We'll make this available to all of the management teams so that they have these models. What I will tell you though, is this is not a model that you can teach without going through the training. It is a certified model. So whereas we've made this available to you, please don't do a lot of that taking in and publishing it elsewhere. It is a copyrighted model that you have to be certified to do. But you can certainly print it out and have it by your desk to look at.
Thanks for sharing, Debbie. We did have a question in the chat from Shaterica. What are some ways that we can keep ourselves in stages 5 and 6? And is it natural for us to go through the cycle more than once?
Yes, it's very natural because sometimes a change isn't very static. So you may have one cycle that's going on and an attribute of that cycle changes. And so the whole thing didn't change, but just a slight attribute change. And your body's reaction, your mind's reaction to that particular attribute change gets you starting the cycle all over. So yes, you can go through a cycle for a specific change more than once. Again, the best way to, it's not static. So you don't get to integration and you sit there, right? It's not where you just get to the end. You say, okay, now I'm done and I move on. It's really beginning to see how different attributes or aspects of the change that you're in starts a cycle and progresses through. The more you get to that point of understanding and integration, the more nimble you are and the more you begin to build this skill set as the change agent.
Okay, the
Poll is live now.
Okay.
And I think it would be, so the poll is up, and I think that it's we should clarify that it doesn't matter, because I could say from a personal level, depending on which change, which situation, I could be in a different stage. So for me, it would be easy for me to mark 1 through 6 for my answer. I could be any of those 1 through 6, depending on the scenario that we were talking about.
Yeah, but here's what I want you to do though. I want you to pick one change, and I'm not going to dictate to you what change that is. I want you to pick a change that in your mind is the most important for you at this moment, and then do an acknowledgement of what part of the cycle you are in, that what stage of the cycle you are in that change. That particular acknowledgement is the first step to seeing how do I progress to the next stages and how do I get this to become an integrated piece of the new normal. So just pick one change and work, because all of us may have 7, 8, 9, 10 changes going on that we have, 7, 8, 9, 10 cycles for. But I want you to start with one and dissect and analyze that one based on the stages in the cycle and go from there. We'll keep the poll up. People can continue voting, but we'll continue to take comments, and we can unmute your phone, your mics, if you had a comment or a question or an experience you'd like to share. Any others? We have about 6 minutes. So any others?
Shaterica says she can definitely say that right now she is at a stage 3 because of everything going on and not being able to work, but is learning to be comfortable right now and steadily moving into stage 4.
Right.
Cheryl has raised her hand. Let me unmute her.
Yes, I didn't want anything in particular. I just wanted to add that I was able to see the list for me to put my different stages, but once I clicked over to the chat box, it went away. Can you resubmit that to me again, please?
Let's see, it should still be going.
Do you mind sharing with us what stage you are in the change that's at the forefront of your mind right now?
Yes, I don't mind sharing.
All right, tell us.
I would definitely say I'm in stage 3.
Okay.
And the reason being is because right now, with this crisis with the coronavirus, I have the feeling of uncertainty as far as if this thing is going to actually be resolved. I know every day I look at the news and they give us updates, but then again, it crosses it out because then you get other conflicting news that there's still other issues going on. So I do experience the feeling of anxiety that is plugged into stage 3. So I would completely say that I would be in the stage 3 at this point. And also, I want to add that I feel unproductive because I'm so used to, I was listening to the other section yesterday when one of the employees was saying that he was so used to getting up, going to work. And I can really relate to those feelings because I'm the same way. Even though I still get up early every morning and I keep myself busy around the house with coming online and speaking with you guys, but I'm used to going to work, being on the bus and doing what I was doing before this crisis came. So I can really relate. So I would say that unproductive piece is also in stage 3. So I would definitely say I'm in the stage 3 process right now.
Very good. Thanks for sharing those, Cheryl. I'm looking at the poll, and we seem to have the majority, 32% of the people who responded being in stage 4 and 26 being in stage 5. Stage 1, we have 5%. Stage 2, we have 11. And stage 6, we have 3. I just want to say, though, as human beings, we tend to always want to be on the good side, and that's not what the change cycle is about, right? Yeah, we want you to migrate through the processes and integrate change, but we don't want you to just jump to the integration because that sounds right. So then what happens is you get back to that, the smallest thing triggers a sense of loss and doubt, and you start over. So the goal is for you to really work through these stages, do the inventories that need to be done at every single stage in order to progress. Do we have any other comments? We still have a few minutes.
Bill McGee's got his hand raised.
Well, let's, Cheryl, did you want to finish up your thought?
You know what? I can say definitely that, like I just expressed, I was in stage 3, but I wouldn't say it would be stage 3 every day. I guess it would fluctuate between the different stages 1 through 6, as the other host also indicated. She said that she was going through stages 1 through 6, but I would say mainly sometimes I would feel stage 3. That's the reason why I wanted to elaborate on that. But again, I would say that I do go through all the stages. Sometimes, I say it fluctuates, but I would zoom in on stage 3 because of the simple fact that we're going through this crisis right now.
All right, I will tell you, if you're talking about, and this is for everyone, if you're talking about the same identified change, then that fluctuation isn't likely. What that means then is you haven't really built the skill sets to migrate through the stages. A feeling, right, and being placed in that stage are two different things. So you may hear one thing and feel good, but if the thoughts and the behavior isn't supportive, then you're really not in the stage that you think you're in. Again, I'm not talking about multiple changes. I'm talking about one change. If you think about the same change, then it's unlikely that we're doing this circular roller derby type stuff, because then we haven't really landed to process and build the skill sets needed to migrate through the stages. Let's open the line for Bill.
Randolph, there's everybody has a personal and professional life, and a lot of people say you can keep them separate, but I believe they're one and the same. My wife is getting ready to have to medically retire early, and that keeps me somewhere in that danger zone between stage 3 and 4. While professionally, I try to stay in stage 5 and 6. But personally and professionally, it it throws me into that danger zone at any given time around stage 4 because of the anxiety associated with it. So there's a balance you have to find between your personal and professional life and where I feel you stay in these stages.
Yeah.
I do believe that you go through them all. But, you know, professionally, you know, I mean, in IT, we adapt to change on a daily basis, learning new skills and new programs and new things. But so that's maybe a little different than others, but everyone in their personal life, I feel like, goes through, especially all the stages, whether it's loss of a loved one or loss of income due to COVID-19 or other reasons. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, Bill. And I would tell everybody, I am a big proponent for the utilization and repurposing of skill sets. That's what I call it, right? And what I mean by that is that if you have a skill set that, so let's take the IT folks, for example. If you are used to changing and you may be progressing through these stages pretty fast, in your personal and professional, in your professional life, there is some sort of a driver. There's an imperative that's driving the ability to progress through stages 1 through 6 so fast professionally. I say do an inventory of what that driver is. Find the relations of that. What could a similar driver be in your personal life? And see how that driver, how that skill set can help you migrate through the stages from the personal life side. So again, I want us to think, again, not just saying, this is how I process in my personal life, this is how I process in my professional life, but it's the same brain, I agree. It's the same head, it's the same brain. And so ask yourself, do that inventory of what are the skill sets here that I can translate on this side. I may not move as fast in my personal life, but I can begin to build the skill sets there as well. All right, I see that we're out of time. We will continue to open up, and again, as we talk, as we get back to campus, we will spend a lot of time with teams working through this, because we know that stage 2 productivity will be affected, and we'll be planning and preparing for that. And we will try to get folks to integration, particularly around our operations, how we do business, how we shift during these times. So Catherine, I'm going to turn things over to you. Again, for all of you, it has been another pleasure talking to my auxiliary family. I am so excited to be a part of the team and so excited for everything that you all are doing.
Thank you, Randolph. Thank you, everyone.